Hello everyone, welcome back to Open Line, talking about sentencing reform, prison sentencing reform in Tennessee. We have with us Reverend Jeannie Alexander, Director of No Exceptions Prison Collective, talking about a bill that is going before, it'll be before the legislature again this year. And we have several calls, so let's just go back here to the phones. Let's go to Lucy. Hello, Lucy.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, what's on your mind?
Lucy.
Well, I would like to ask the Reverend if she's ever heard of a guy, a sports writer by the name of Al Browning.
Oh, yes.
Okay, he was a big sports writer. He was a big roll tide kind of guy. Have you ever heard of his book, Enough is Enough?
I might have.
It was about a murder that took, or a double murder that took place on January 16th, 1968 in North Nashville. And it involved 5 young TSU students.
Right.
All right. I think one of them is still in prison, okay? And there's kind of a long story to that. I won't go into that. But I don't even know if the guy's still in prison. I have never understood a lot of that case. But you look what happened in the early 80s, like in Florida. They were locking everybody up, and it was unmanageable. And they let the murderers and the rapists out, but let the people that were caught with a couple pounds of pot stay in jail. So go figure. I've never understood where you have to do a certain percentage of your time, but somebody can rape somebody and get out, get sentenced to 10 years and be out in 3, and somebody can rape somebody and be in for 20 or 30. I mean, it never makes any sense to me. This guy, there's one last student. When these guys were put in prison, these TSU students, they were in their early 20s. They've got to be, the guy that's left in there, if he's still alive, has got to be in his 70s.
Right.
How do you think his life's going to turn out when he gets out? These guys had walked out of the Tennessee State Prison, maintained, when they were escaped, a life of their own for like 10 years or something. They had businesses and everything. Came back to prison, you know, the ones that made it, one, they found him hung in a jail cell or something before the FBI agent got there the next morning. And then the last 3 or 4 did some time. But there's one that has been in prison since they recaptured him, I think, in 87.
So all these people
86.
escaped. So I don't know this story, but I guess all the people escaped and then they got back in. Is that the essence? All right, and then what is your question?
My question is, if you're not familiar with this case, I wish Mr. Hall would probably do a story on this, because there's a story here. What's the guy still doing in prison? What are the circumstances? In this self-published book by Al Browning, Enough is Enough, he goes into more details about the case. And I don't even know if the guy can come up for parole or not. I think he has to do like 99% of his life sentence or first-degree murder sentence or whatever. Okay. And I don't even know how they determine that. So I'm going to hang up and
all right, well, that's an
interesting.
Thank you for listening. Thank you, Lucy.
So I am familiar with that case.
Are you familiar with that case?
I am very familiar with that case.
So what do we need to take away there?
So I mean, the takeaway there, and I believe the book was actually called On the Run. You need to double check that. The gentleman she's referring to is Bill Allen, who, and I'm just going to say this, is one of the finest individuals I've ever known in my life. That is a complex case. It is a case that involved racism and policing in the 1960s. I was at Bill Allen's parole hearing, and I can tell you how he's doing. He has the love and support of family and community, and he is out as well. He should be out. At his parole hearing, he had a member of, I believe, of the FBI testify. He had one of the former police officers who was employed with the police in Nashville at the time testify. He had probably over 60 people in support at that parole hearing, including me. How long ago was that he got out? It was a few years ago. A few years ago. And it was a long time coming, and he should have gotten out, and he didn't pose a threat. And Bill Allen, when Bill Allen, yes, they did escape, and I would say that that was an unjust conviction to begin with. When you look at the circumstances and some of the testimony at that parole hearing was so compelling, and discussion about what was happening in the police force in Nashville at the time, those young men were afraid for their lives. It is a really compelling case. And when Bill did escape, one of the places he went to, I believe, was in Texas. And when there was an extradition order executed, members of that community, thousands of members, signed a petition for him to stay because he was such an asset to their community. So this is why I'm saying, this is why we need to be able to hear a full narrative. There's no such thing as a single person story, and I'm glad and I'm proud that Bill Allen is out today.
So Lucy, thank you for bringing that up. All right, we're about to have to break, but I want to ask you this: we have a new governor. How, like, you're pushing for reform in sentencing? How optimistic are you? What do you think your chances are for getting this passed this legislative session?
I'm cautiously very optimistic, if you could be cautiously and very at the same time. And whether it gets passed this legislative session, potentially. I think if we have to continue to work toward the right reform, I would rather work toward this longer. And quite frankly, what I would actually much rather see is for Governor Lee to lead on this. He ran on a platform of reform, unabashedly. He is involved with Men of Valor. He has done prison ministry. He has a deeper understanding than I think any governor we've ever had. And when we've seen comprehensive sentencing reform, that has come from the governor's office. And what we'd really like to see is the governor take the lead on this and champion sentencing reform, even rather than piecemeal. So we would be willing to work with the governor toward comprehensive reform rather than try to do this one point at a time and keep trying to adjust. Let's get it right. And
it seems like the conversation has changed a bit. I mean, obviously, Donald Trump pushed prison reform on the federal level, and it passed. One of the few things to pass, bipartisan. Right. We have bipartisan
right. And then, I mean, in our outgoing governor, Governor Haslam's language with clemency for Cyntoia Brown, that was broad language that invited that kind of 15 years for juveniles. I mean, this is the direction we are moving in, and to continue to use the old rhetoric of tough on crime and truth in sentencing, that's rhetoric from the 90s. This is 2019, and it's time that we get a lot smarter about this and a lot more just.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.